What time is it? It's time for another Every Other Wednesday.
Welcome, everyone. Glad to see people coming in to another edition of Every Other Wednesday. And yes, Jeff is alone today. You can all send your pity remarks. But I do have a question in the chat box, really easy one, yes or no. Do you believe you are one of the most creative people you know? Just yes or no in the chat box. Do you believe you are one of the most creative people you know? Jennifer, capitals with exclamation marks. We're excited, and as you can see, I am alone today. The other three guys are actually working, so you're stuck with me. But today's topic is creative thinking, and very near and dear to my heart, as most of you know. Coloring Outside the Lines was my first book on creative thinking in business, and your answers don't surprise me. Rob, thank you for saying yes. The question was, are you one of the most creative people you know? And as I travel the world for 25 years, I ask that question. 99% of my audiences say no. I truly believe everybody's creative. You know, when were we most creative in our lives? All of us. When we were kids, right? So it didn't just fall off. I mean, it's there inside every one of us. And what the group is going to talk about today in a pre-recorded session is really that creative thinking and how it applies and how you can infuse it into your culture. So one other thing, if you're interested at all, I would love to send you a copy of my book, Coloring Outside the Lines. It would just be a PDF. It's not a Kindle. It's not digital form. It's just a free PDF. All you got to do is in the chat box, give me your email address, and I'll send you a copy. So without further ado, let me share my screen, and we'll get started. Hi, guys.
Hey, everyone.
Welcome everybody to our virtual edition of Every Other Wednesday.
Aren't they all virtual? Aren't they all virtual, Jeff?
Well, that's true.
I'm so confused.
Our pre-recorded virtual version.
I was going to pretend like, we're actually here. I think Jeff is actually here, but Sunjay and I are busy learning some bugs.
Yeah, you guys are going to be working. I'm not. So why don't we go around and introduce ourselves? And Mike, what day is it?
It is Wednesday, February 7th, 2024. And my name is Michael Kerr, coming to you as usual from Canmore, Alberta, in the beautiful Canadian Rockies. And I speak and write about inspiring workplace cultures. And over to you, Sunjay.
Hold on a second. Not to put you on the spot,
yes,
Mr. Kerr, because I would never do that.
Yes,
what are the theme days today?
What are the theme days? Oh, very good. Well, Wednesday, February 7th, it just happens to be official ballet day, Who Shall I Be Day, periodic table day, and wave all your fingers at your neighbors day. All of them, not just the one. All of your fingers wave at your neighbors. And tomorrow, this is a good one to celebrate tomorrow. Tomorrow is official Laugh and Grow Rich Day.
Wow.
Which is different than Think. Which is different than Think and Grow Rich.
Yes,
that is.
Sunjay knew that today was National Ballet Day. I just got a feeling. So.
You got it right. And I like how you answered it for February 7th and not what today is.
Whatever today is.
Right.
How about you, Sunjay? Who are you?
Okay. My name is Sunjay Nath. I speak on leadership and performance, best known for a concept called the 10-80-10 principle, which helps organizations and individuals focus on their strength to achieve better results. I'm based just outside of Toronto in Oakville, Ontario, in Canada. Mr. Tobe.
And I'm Jeff Tobe, coming to you from beautiful Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I speak about coloring outside the lines, how to make the leap from customer service to customer experience. And today, we're talking about creative thinking and why it's so important today in today's culture and how to infuse it into your culture. So we have a question for you. In the chat box, even though I know we're pre-recorded, I want you to put what you think the definition of creativity is. What is creativity? So let me start with you guys. Mike, I'll put you on the spot. What is creativity?
Put me on the spot. Well, creativity is the process of coming up with new, novel ideas, to put it succinctly.
Okay.
And I would say, and we could talk about this, different than innovation. We sometimes use those words interchangeably, right?
Yeah.
Sunjay?
Well, let's just do it. What's the difference, Mike?
Well, innovation, I always say, is the actual implementation of those ideas. So creativity is the process of coming up with new ideas, and then innovation is actually implementing those ideas, turning those ideas into action.
Yeah. Sunjay?
Creativity is the process of being creative. How's that?
Pretty good.
Jeez.
It's brilliant
Thank
in
you
its
very much.
simplicity.
I sound like a dictionary. To me, it's the idea of looking at the same thing with a different lens to see it differently. So it's this idea of cliche thinking outside the box, but it can be building a better. It could be building a better mousetrap, or tweaking it, because that is being creative. But just completely looking at it from a different angle and going, we're buying a cat. So I look at it as looking at the same things that other people are looking at it, but looking at it from a different angle, different perspective, to open up new possibilities and new ideas.
Are you serious?
Sunjay,
You're going to say drawing out? What did you say? Thinking outside the box. You're not even going to give me a plug?
Yeah, no.
Okay, thank you.
Is that like coloring outside the lines or something?
There, thank you. It's like when an angel gets their wings. I get royalties every time you say it. So,
All right.
so yeah, I agree with both of you completely. Mike, I like to say, I add one word though. The difference between creativity and innovation to me is the profitable implementation of ideas. And profitable not mean making money. It's implemented, it's actually used, and successfully. But I also think that I think the creativity is really two words. There's create, and that's what most of us can do. We're human beings. We have the most amazing ability to create new ideas. It's the ivity that's the hard part, right? It's the implementation. It's taking the risks of being creative.
Well, I mean, that's age old, right? We just kind of passed the new year and everyone's creative. I'm going to eat better. I'm going to exercise more. I'm going to do this. And then all of a sudden, when it comes to the implementation piece and actually taking action, we kind of, oh, my hip is sore. Oh, we have company coming. I'll start it next week. Oh, and we're really good at coming up with excuses as to why we're not implementing it. And actually, let me sort of throw it your way. Do you think it's better to be a person of action and not necessarily direction, or plan out everything and do nothing about it?
Are you asking me?
I'm asking both of you. I don't know.
Because you're asking the wrong person, because I'm absolutely,
You mean leap before you look, as opposed to look before you leap?
I'm not planning anything. So,
there is something to this idea, I think, sometimes, and I've written about this in the past, of leaping before you look, because very often we get bogged down. We get that, the classic analysis paralysis. We don't move. We overplan, overthink things. And sometimes you don't know what the next step is until you take the first step is, right? You don't know what to do until you actually do something.
I think by default, we're hardwired one way or the other. There are people who are meticulous planners, and they never, and I'm saying this in an extreme, but they're meticulous planners and they never do anything. And other people that are jumping off the cliff going, I should have thought this through while they're in the air. And to your point, Mike, yeah, the reality is sometimes you need one, sometimes you need the other. But I think that how we grow as human beings is we step outside our comfort zone, which means if we're a meticulous planner, sometimes it's better to jump first and figure it out later. And on the flip side, if we're very fly by the seat of our pants, sometimes just to sit down and write out the itinerary and what our next week looks like in planning is extremely beneficial for personal growth.
And I heard a sales trainer, I don't know who to attribute it was, when I first started in the speaking business 1,000 years ago. And they said, if you see the world through your customer's eyes, you'll see the way your customer buys. And I love that. I have taken that to heart and shared it worldwide, because I always say I'm not here for sales training, but you have an internal and external customer. You got to see the world through their eyes. And you guys both mentioned perspective. How? Let's talk about that, because I think our audience wants to know, how do I do this? Any suggestions on how to see the world through your customer's eyes?
Yeah. Well, Sunjay, go ahead. You have your hand up.
I say, when in doubt, cheat. The idea of being creative, you can borrow from different industries. And so I know someone who did a PhD on the idea of collaborative healthcare. This is group work for medical professionals, because this is revolutionary in healthcare, that wait a minute, the medical doctor can talk to the nurse, can talk to the physiotherapist, and we're all on the same team. And this is revolutionary in healthcare. And so a lot of times ideas that are so commonplace in one area or one arena, just taking the core concepts and putting them in a different arena, you're all of a sudden a super creative genius. So you look at sports and you apply sports to business, you apply business to relationships, you apply relationship to self-care, et cetera, and you'll find that there's not a shortage of ideas. It's a matter of how do you translate them from one arena to another.
Yeah, I think what I hear you saying is we need to be more curious. I mean, I think we need to get outside of our four walls of what we know and just look. I say it all the time, Mike. I know you say this too with customer experience. Is that be aware of the experiences you have and how can you bring them back into your industry, into your world. I think
exactly curiosity is so important when it comes to creativity, and I think from a cultural perspective, it's imperative to build a culture of curiosity. One of the things I know some companies do, one of my clients does this once a year, they do a kind of idea scavenger hunt field trip where they go out in teams with small budgets and they just go on this kind of fun field trip out into the community, and they go into different businesses, they buy the different things, they shop in different shops, just with their eyes open and looking at different perspectives. And like Sunjay said, hey, what can we learn from this experience we had in this bank? What can we learn from this experience over here? You know, what fun things do we see? And they go back and they share these ideas.
Yeah.
But back to your point, because it's an important point about forcing a shift in perspective, right? I think there's a number of ways you can do that. I talk a lot about how humor can help us do that, because there's a huge relationship between humor and creativity. Ha plus ha equals because we know humor is also about looking at things in a different way, looking at things through a different perspective. So it helps us see things in that more lateral way. I think this speaks to the importance of diversity in your meetings, having diverse perspectives, having people that see things in a different way, different ethnicities, different genders, different job roles, different positions in the organizations, bringing in your customers, bringing in outside people even who have a totally fresh perspective on your issues, and then just forcing a change in perspective by doing things like, you know, brainstorming the opposite of the problem you're working on. So you look at it in a totally different way, or just changing one part of changing just one word in your challenge statement or problem statement, and brainstorming that will lead you down a totally different path.
Yeah, for sure. And Mike, I think I have an admission to make. I think I owe you money.
Do you?
Yeah. I have a client coming up, and I remembered that you said about the field trip probably 2 years ago on this show, and I'm going to implement it with them. I've already proposed it, and we're going out on the streets of Pittsburgh. So.
Oh, I love that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
There you go. Can I have
very
one?
cool.
And just in terms of the perspective too, there's like you're saying, when we are offering, whether it's a religious difference or a political difference, but age difference, experience difference, like all those things. And we're finally moving away from a culture of tolerance. Oh, you're different, I'll tolerate you, to acceptance and recognizing that having those different perspectives makes us actually better as an organization. And to know that, hey, the Gen Y thinks this way, and the Boomer thinks this way, and the Gen X thinks this way, and the Millennial thinks that. Just bringing it all together, going, hold on, how do we listen to all the perspectives? Because it makes us better, and that as people understand that there's a business case for that, and I mean organizational culture in general, there is still a lot of thought of people rolling their eyes, going, okay, this organizational fluff, you know, that it doesn't improve the bottom line. It absolutely does. Maybe not directly. But if you have a lower turnover because people are more satisfied, or you create a culture where people want to attract some of the best talent because they know that's the place to be, then your job satisfaction goes up, you have less turnover, you have less absenteeism, and there's a very distinct business case to say, yeah, doing the right thing actually saves you money in the long run.
You know, I've been promoting for years cross education in organizations as opposed to cross training. But why not take your receivables and payables department, your accounting department, somebody, and put them in the engineering department for a few hours. Take that engineer and put them in the sales department for just a few hours. That's how they're going to get different perspective of especially as it relates to the culture of the organization.
Yeah. Well, and Sanjay's point about, again, embracing diversity and people with different perspectives, it again reminds me of the old saying, if you have two employees who think alike or two leaders who think alike, one of them is redundant. So we want to make sure, right? If you have a group of people that all have the same education, same background, same training, they read the same books, they watch this, everything's, what are they going to see when they look at it? They're going to, chances are, see pretty similar things.
Yeah.
It's a big mistake that a lot of entrepreneurs make. They go, they're working out of a garage and they're like, oh, we're going to bring on Sally. Sally's amazing. She thinks just like we do. She's going to fit in just great. But that's not what you want. You want someone, you want healthy conflict. Healthy conflict has an underlying premise that there's safety and there's respect. But for me to say to my boss or my subordinate to say to me, you're wrong, you're an idiot, and here's why. Now, you want to approach it politely, but to be able to have that discussion allows the organization to move forward, because I don't care how smart your boss is, they don't know everything, and they don't know your job better than you do. And so if they're open enough and they appreciate that there are other solutions, that their way is not necessarily the best way, it may be the best way for them, but it may not be the best way. And as long as they're open to those creative positions, you overall will then morph things and move forward more as an organization.
Yeah, I think we're missing one principle, and I'm going to challenge you guys. Grab a piece of paper and a pen. And when I say you guys, I mean all you guys, you two, and all of our, come on, audience. Just a piece of paper and any pen. Got it? All right. As quick as you can, I want you all to draw a coffee cup. You don't need an artist rendering, just draw a coffee cup. And should I do Wait, we can't see it, Sunjay. There it is. Okay. Keep it up there till Mike gets his up. I had to have a happy face. I know. You didn't even have steam coming off the top, though, Mike. I was disappointed. Okay, wait. I'm going to venture to guess that most of our audience drew something similar to what you drew, right? But the point is, I've done this exercise virtually for a couple of years, and people have sent me other ones. The bottom of the cup. How about looking down at the top of the cup? That one something that looked like what you just did, Sunjay, and it said made in China, which was obviously the bottom of the cup. And why didn't you draw a Starbucks kind of cup or a teacup? Or the point that I'm trying to make, there is a point to my madness. The point I'm trying to make is I believe there's always, always, always more than one right answer to every single challenge you face. And we get into this rut where we go, I've seen this 1,000 times before, I know exactly what to do. Instead of saying, well, wait a second, maybe there's a second right answer. And that's when we become creative. That's when we challenge our team to become more creative. Great idea, guys. Now set it aside. What's the next right answer?
That's the great reminder of the basic theater improv principle of yes and, right?
Yes, and.
Yes, that's a great possible answer. And let's keep looking for some more great right answers.
Yeah, exactly.
The other thing too is, although even if you could deem something to be a right answer or a wrong answer, time changes. So what was right or wrong 6 months ago or 6 years ago may or may not be now. And I keep coming back to that example, but it's a good image. In the 80s, Michael Jackson was wearing his masks. He was wearing the air filter mask. He was just 30 years early for COVID. So, I mean, you know what I'm saying though, is like a lot of things that don't work or do work at one point because of technology, because of environment, because of political landscape, may or may not work in the future. So you can revisit some ideas from the past.
Yeah. So I guess the next question is why? In today's culture, why is it so important to be creative? And I'm going to start. One of the things we don't think about with creativity is building teams. It really does lend itself to teamwork. If people are being creative and challenging each other to look for that second right answer, to look from a different perspective, I think that it's the glue that holds a team together. So that's one thing I would throw. Why be more creative, Sunjay?
Well, lack of resources, right? What happens is when there's a lot of fat in the system, and I'm actually taking this more from an economical standpoint. So in business, when everything's thriving and everything's growing and you're beating off customers because you have too many sales and profits are going through the roof, then you don't need to be efficient, right? You can just kind of be the fat cat and whatever. Yeah, we'll figure it out. But as margins get thinner and as it's harder to find employees, and you need to get that sustainable advantage. And one of the ways you get the sustainable advantage is through creativity. So we have to do more now with less resources. We need to attract our people, and we can't just keep adding zeros onto their paychecks. Whereas at certain points in the economy, we had done that, and we'll probably get back to doing that. But right now, that's not an option. So if that's not an option, guess what? You got to be creative, right? And creativity doesn't always require more money. It doesn't. It requires more cleverness, more change in perspective, more listening. That's a big piece of creativity, because if you have a team of 50 or 100 people in your group, I promise you have some pretty funky, cool ideas there that have not been explored because people haven't felt welcome enough to share their opinion, or they haven't been asked, or they haven't been in an environment that was fruitful for them to share that.
Psychological safety, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Mike, why be more creative?
Well, a line I use all the time is ideas are the currency of success. So I think no matter what organization you're in, you need to think of yourself as being in the business of ideas. The pace of change has never been greater. The amount of change has never been greater. And it's just a matter of time, as I'm fond of saying, that if the pace of change inside your organization doesn't match the pace of change on the outside, you're going to be in a little bit of trouble. And I think we need to be creative as well to fight inertia, to fight the dangers of status quo, right? Being satisfied with where you are at. That is a hugely risky place to be.
Yeah.
And another side benefit of creativity, and you touched on this, Jeff, talking about building strong teams, but also just from the aspect of using it as an engagement piece, as a motivation. We know people are highly motivated to be creative. One of the top things that shows up in surveys is people want to be asked for their input, for their ideas. It's one of the most powerful ways of recognizing employees when we just ask them for ideas. It shows that we respect their opinion, their judgment, their wisdom. It shows that we value them. And then finally, I'd say it's also fun to come up with ideas. As much as ha plus ha equals aha.
I think it's the number one reason to be more creative is to have more fun. Right?
Yeah, it's really fun to come up with. And remember, we're not just, as we've all alluded to, I think, we're not just talking about creating a new product or you need creativity in every aspect of your job. It could be how to deal with a 10% budget cut. It could be how to make your workplace more fun, how to deliver customer experience in a different way than you have before. The list goes on and on and on. It's about processes. It's about every aspect of your business can be improved and helped by creativity.
And creativity doesn't have to be complicated. Sometimes the most elegant solutions are very simple. Like, for example, everyone ties their shoes. Most people do the traditional wrap it around your thumb, right? But then there's the bunny ear one where you kind of do it. But there's a third one that very few people know about. And you really, trust me, you want to Google this crap. It's called magic fingers. So look at Googling magic fingers. That's how I taught my youngest one to tie his shoes. It'll be like, and you'll do a double take. So I was in 10th grade. I went to a conference, and as a part of the fancy dinner, they gave us a little space pen. And these space pens are these pressurized ink cartridges that you can actually, they're actually developed for the space program. So they have zero gravity, they can write underwater. So if you ever have to finish that essay in the shower, they were perfect. And so I kind of did a little bit of research on it because I was intrigued by, why did they do that? So the Americans spent millions of dollars developing these pressurized pens. So when they went into space, when they were taking notes, zero gravity, it would be hard for pens to work. What did the Russians do?
I'm looking for one right now.
They used pencils.
Yeah.
Right. So again, it's a very creative solution. It didn't have to be very fancy, but saved them millions of dollars.
Yeah. Can I just say, Sunjay, that I'd be a little nervous Googling with my child magic fingers. I'm just saying.
Magic finger, tying your shoe, magic fingers.
Okay.
Add long tail search.
Got it. I wanted to say also, I think another reason to be creative is differentiation. I mean, what makes you different in the marketplace? Why are you different from anybody else who professes to be in the same business or in the same profession? That's where creativity lies. I think in the ability to look at our competition and say, how are we different? And that's a whole other topic. But
yeah, that's important, right? And different. I think we sometimes need to add that little proviso, different, not just for the sake of being different always, but different in a way that adds value.
Absolutely. Well, the reason I go a hub is because my question to you guys is going to be, can you be too creative? And I believe you can, by the way. I think that an organization could try to be too creative and not provide value, Mike, as you say, that where they're just being creative for creativity's sake. If I can give myself a plug, my saying, as you know, is coloring outside of the lines is great as long as you don't fall off the page. And I think every industry, every profession has the edge of the page. What I challenge audiences to do is find out if you're at the edge of the page, but don't go any further. I mean, an accounting firm has different edges of the page than a professional speaker's firm, So we've got to figure out where's the edge of the page for us personally, where's the edge of the page for the customer, where's the edge of the page, for the company itself, the organization, if you're not a principal in the organization.
Yeah. Well, and like anything else, anything in its extremity is usually not beneficial. Right. So if you're all about creative today, creative tomorrow, then you have no opportunity to see if things work or don't work. You keep bastardizing every solution. So you're like, we're implementing this new change, and then people do it for 3 days, and they're like, wait, we're going over here, and then they do that for a day, and let's do that, and you don't have any opportunity to see if something works or doesn't work.
Right.
So yeah, if you're constantly changing or being overly creative, it's just as bad as being completely stagnant.
Right. That's why I go back to the profitable implementation of ideas. That they're going to work, and that still takes research. It still takes analyzing the solution. It's not just jumping in and just doing it for the sake of doing it. All right, so let's switch gears a little bit and talk about how do we infuse creativity into our culture? If we don't feel like it's a creative culture now, what can we do? And Mike, I know we're going with humor, so
IV. No, I
IV.
would suggest, yes.
I would IV drip.
You hire Jeff and you hire Mike. That would be my suggestion.
That's a good suggestion. That's a darn.
Sunjay, we really love you. So
yeah, there you go.
Well, I'll start.
Okay.
I think that first of all, I've had many clients who say, we work with all engineers, we work with scientists, and we're not gonna start playing whatever foosball at lunch and telling them to even go on a field trip. But I think first people have to understand that everybody is creative. A scientist is incredibly creative. An engineer is incredibly creative. They have different edges of the page, right? So I think it's the first step is getting everybody to believe they are creative, because they're walking around. The first question I ask an audience always is, how many of you truly believe you are one of the most creative people you know? And I know that I'm going to get 3 hands, no matter the size of the organization. And that gives me a great starting place, right? Because people don't believe that they're creative. So we've got to start by not only creating an environment or a culture of creativity, we have to get people to believe it.
Yeah. And I think being, well, right there too, just being actually saying it implicitly, not just assuming people know that they should be creative. The leaders need to say it. We want you to be creative. We want your ideas. We value your ideas. Come to us with your ideas. For me, a starting point in infusing a culture is creating, and it goes back to the curiosity piece, infusing your culture with questions, creating a culture of questioning almost, right? Because questions drive the creative process. They're the start of the creative process. The creative process doesn't start with that light bulb moment when you're showering in the morning. It started before that, because you were thinking about something. Maybe even you went to bed the night before with a problem and a challenge, something, an opportunity you're thinking about, and then it just happened to come together in that shower the next morning. Mm-hmm. So creating a culture of questioning to drive curiosity is big for me. And that could be anything from opening your meetings with a thought-provoking question, challenging your employees all the time with different questions to get them to keep thinking about your business in different ways. How can we do this? How might we improve on this? Having a question of the month, or 1 month, everybody focuses on just one challenge, one question. Having a question board where people don't write down ideas or answers, but just write down questions that they have about your business. So just infusing any way you can questions into your culture, I think, is really important.
And Mike, what you just said about being in the shower, I'd love to say, don't put your people under pressure. Like, I hate when you sit around a boardroom, you say, okay, let's come up with ideas for 2024 on how we're going to change the customer experience. No, you upload your brain like a computer and let it sit. Let them go to the next day and have a shower and go, aha. But it's not going to happen on the spot. That's not where you're going to get your best ideas. So I love that you said that.
And creativity too is like humor, and that everyone is creative and everyone has a sense of humor. Right. The thing is, we tend to kind of go, oh, they're in accounting, there's no humor there. Are you kidding me? There are all kinds of great math jokes for them. Just because they're not mainstream, everyone likes to laugh, but they like to laugh about what they like to laugh about. And it's just the same thing, everyone's creative for sure. I've done activities with certain groups. Well, as you know, how you treat a sales group is very different from how you treat an engineering group. They both want to learn, they both want to laugh, they're both creative, but they're in different ways. So if you do something more emotionally based with the salespeople, they're going to gobble it up. If you do something emotionally based with the engineering group, they're less likely to gobble it up. And so it's not only a matter of one size fits all, but it's understanding the group and what their drivers are and speaking in the currency which internally reflects with them. If you say to engage your group on the idea of creativity, and you give a math problem to a bunch of engineers, they're going to play a heck of a lot more than you would if you gave that to the HR group. So I think it really comes down to really understanding who your group is and not just assuming that there's a one size fits all. Well, I got the exercise from the creativity handbook and I did it with my people. I did it word for word. Well, that might not work. You got to be creative about it.
You mentioned accountants, Sunjay. For years, twice a year, I did this theater improv program for creativity in the workplace with CFOs. And they were terrified at the start of these sessions, right? But by the end, we use theater improv to talk about different principles of creativity and leadership and communication in the workplace. But they were highly creative, and they always had so much fun.
Yep.
I want to do a little timeout. I want to give a quick shout out to all of Sunjay's impersonations. I was watching Jerry Seinfeld the other day, and he has this little bit about how his wife, whenever his wife impersonates a man, it's always the same man, and it's almost identical to all of Sunjay's impersonations. It's like,
thank you.
I'm working as an accountant.
Hey, I want you to know too, Michael, hypothetically, if your car were to get keyed this afternoon, I had nothing to do with it.
Nothing to do with it.
He just has connections in Canmore, Alberta.
Yeah. Exactly.
You know a guy.
I thought you were going to give a shout out to Richard for some reason in his impersonations. Have you ever heard a Scottish impersonation? Never mind. Forget it. Oh, well, don't ask. I promise you.
We didn't even mention that Richard's not here today.
Who's Richard? Right.
Who's Richard? I just noticed. There's somebody missing.
So back to I think back to ideas to infuse creativity into the organization. Other ideas, Mike. You've got hundreds of these that you've used.
Well, again, you did say I would get around to humor. So again, I'm going to give a plug for humor because we know that it is a huge driver of creativity. It helps create psychological safety. It gets people looking at things in a different way, a different perspective. It shuts down the negativity. It tends to shut down those seagull voices that kill ideas prematurely. It makes it more open and fun and playful, right? We're talking about playing with ideas. And so that's why there's a big overlap between humor and creativity too, right? Especially when you're in meetings, you want to create this playful atmosphere where it's safe to play and have fun and stand up and have these great conversations, great brainstorms, but in a fun, energetic way. And humor is a huge driver of that.
Rewarding the behaviors that you want to see. As simple as that is. So when people are being creative, whether it's public admiration or a sticker or a shout out or whatever it is. But when we see behaviors we want, I think I'm pretty sure it's from a Ken Blanchard book, but he says, catch them doing something right, which is a philosophy I've always loved. And I use it with my kids. As an example, my eldest came back last night from a party, and he came back at 12:38. And he came and he woke me up and he said, Dad, I just want you to know I'm back home. And this morning, I did not wake him up early. I waited till he slept in. And I was like, you know what? I love that you did that. And he said, well, you asked me to do that. I said, I did, but I love that you're doing it. Right. So guess what? He's more likely to do it the next time. So if we can catch our people doing something right and bringing that to their attention, going, we appreciate that, it's more likely to be repeated.
Yeah. Mike, you reminded me of a saying that I have said in many a workshop. I hope I get it right, but premature evaluation prevents conception. Right. And I get a giggle, but that's what you're talking about, is that we jump in too quickly with getting to a solution. And I think that's a challenge as well. Stop your people from coming up with solutions too quickly.
Yeah, recognize those are very separate processes, right?
Yes. Yeah, for sure.
And by the way, sometimes the better solutions come after we've had a chance to purge our emotions. And so going through that venting process for whatever that is, whether it's excitement or anger or frustration, can get us grounded. I was actually on a project years ago where we were basically creating a customer, a customer service video game. It was almost like a choose your own adventure. It was done via video where this face was like, where the heck's the manager? I need to speak to the manager. And you had multiple choice answers. Was that the same voice?
Yeah, that's it.
And the multiple choice answers are like, can I help you with something? Take off, lady, or the manager's not here. And then based on that, they react. And here's the voice again. No, you can't help me. Everyone keeps telling me I need to speak to the manager. It doesn't ever work. And anyways, the bottom line was we actually had a PhD in organizational behavior helping us create these scripts. And what's one of the big things he was really pushing for, he goes, you can't get people to be rational when they're in an irrational state. And so the process here of this choose your own adventure, getting to the right answer, was you had to let the person vent. So before jumping to the solution, letting people get out whatever they need to get out. And then it's like a toddler. If a toddler's freaking out and you try to go, well, that behavior is not acceptable, they're not even hearing you. You have to let them spin out, let them tire themselves out. And when they get to a rational state, then we can have a rational conversation.
Yeah. So as we go ahead, Mike.
Oh, I was just going to add something that it tweaked to me when Sunjay was talking like this. The other thing I think we need to remember is a communication vacuum in any organization is a hindrance to creativity. It is one of the many creativity roadblocks. You need as much information as you can. It all goes into the idea hopper, right? And if you don't have the whole story of what's happening in your organization and other departments, it's that much harder to be creative because you're not seeing the big picture, you're not seeing connections. I think of a business like Zingerman's Roadhouse Restaurant in Ann Arbor, Michigan, that has this very open book concept in terms of how they manage, how they build their culture, where all the employees, doesn't matter if you're a busboy or a server or anybody, they all have all the financial data. They know what the numbers are. They know everything. And so that encourages everybody in those restaurants to think of ideas, not just from their own perspective or what will help them, but to see ideas that might help somebody else on their team. This is going to make the chef's job a lot easier if we start doing this, but they need to have that data
and perspective.
For sure.
Yeah, and the perspective. Yeah.
Okay. So this is a new prop.
Very nice.
Looking through our, what would you call it? I was going to say into our glass ball, or what do you call it? Crystal ball.
A donut.
We've talked about what it is, why it is, how to infuse it. Let's look to the future. That's it. Thank you.
Ooh.
Let's look to the future. We're privileged, and I don't think we all, the three of us, appreciate it all the time, that we see so many different industries and professions, and we're exposed to so much worldwide. So what do you see coming down the road in the future where creativity is going to be it's going to be vital? The first one obviously is AI. We can jump right to that. And I think it's going to take creativity, again, to set ourselves apart and not just use AI for the sake of using AI the way it spits out. I'm talking about Chat GPT, but we can't just use what it spits out. We have to be creative there. But how else do you see creativity coming into play?
Well, again, I touched on it earlier, and I'll go back to it. It's this idea of resource management, right? Like these days, people say with our cell phones, we're a heck of a lot more efficient than we were 30 years ago. We're always on call. And I think that's the blessing and the curse. The expectation is year after year, technological improvement after technological improvement, we're supposed to be getting more and more done with less. And the only way we're going to be able to do that is through creativity. And the creativity might be creating AI so that we don't have to write as many articles. And now all of a sudden they've written this thing and it's 80% done. And now I have to go and refine it. Whereas before it would have taken me 3 hours to write the article. Now it only takes me 20 minutes to edit it. And so we are constant increase of efficiency. And that's like on the labor side, but I'm talking everything. Something as simple as your TV. Our TVs used to be $1 bazillion and they would have these big ass CRTs and they would consume all this energy. And now we have these LED TVs that use, 1/100th of what those CRTs used to use. And again, it's a reiterative process of getting more and more efficient and getting more done with less. We have finite man hours, we have finite physical resources, we have finite time. And if we want to keep evolving as we are, we have to figure out how to be creative to leverage all of that as best we can.
To your point, Sanjay, I was on a HR webinar this past week, just not doing the webinar, I was just a participant. And what floored me is the guy said that as of the end of 2023, there is 0.7 employees available, 0.7 people available for any given job in the United States right now, which means there isn't even one person for every job.
I worked with that 0.7 person in a job years ago.
Did you? Yeah.
Yeah. Total.
I thought you were it.
Come in, give 70% every day.
I swear, I was just going to say I was that 0.7 person. That's why I got fired. So, but it kind of floored me because now it's all of a sudden it's turned to an employer. Employers being more creative in how they recruit as well. So I think that's going to be, and I don't see that going away. As our population grows. So I think that's a future consideration as well. Silence.
Well, yeah, I guess the other thing I would add is just, I think year over year, we see greater globalization, right? And I think recognizing that your competitors are no longer just down the street from you, they can be anywhere. They can be across the world, you're competing now in a dog eat dingo kind of world, and just recognizing that has to keep you on your toes and keep you in a situation where you are having to continually evolve and not rest on your laurels, and again not be happy and satisfied with the status quo.
And I think,
did you just say dog eat dingo?
Yeah, that's clever. I thought that was pretty clever. But to me, creativity,
because it's international, it's global. See what I was doing there?
I know they have those in Alberta, right?
Dingo, dog.
Dingo.
To me, creativity, as we're kind of discussing here, I'm kind of going, I realize how synonymous it is with me with evolution. Because if you're not creative, you're not evolving. And to your point, this whole idea of globalization from a competitor standpoint, but also from a perspective standpoint, and from a customer base standpoint, and from a political landscape, and et cetera, et cetera. So you have to be creative or you're not evolving. And we know what happens when you don't evolve. You devolve and you end up looking like Mike. And that's not a good place to be.
I hate to keep giving you credit, Sanjay, but you brought up another good point. The political landscape is changing. I know here in the States, I know in Canada for a fact, right? And many of our audience have to change with that. And so it is about change. And I think that change is happening more and more rapidly as we look into the future. And because of that, we're going to have to be far more agile. The definition of agile to me is just being able to turn on a dime. Yeah. Look how agile most industries were during the pandemic. I think that there's another crisis around the corner. I don't know what that is, and hopefully it's not a health crisis, but something, politically, economically, whatever it is, we're gonna have to continuously be agile and creative.
Yeah.
Well, you know, a lot of people think that we live on a 100-year cycle. And if you recall, the roaring 20s is what we're in right now. If you look at, especially from a stock market's perspective, we are in the roaring 20s. Does that mean we got another major ass depression coming in the 30s?
Right.
Who knows? But yeah, things are changing. Things
Yeah.
are changing.
Speaking of changing and having to pivot really fast. I was flying back from an engagement in Cancun last week, and I watched.
Excuse me.
Yes, I just thought I'd slip that in there. It was very nice. And I watched the movie on the plane, BlackBerry, about the rise and fall of research in motion and the creation of BlackBerry. And there's this almost heart-wrenching scene, 3/4 of the way through the movie, where all the team from BlackBerry is watching on a big screen TV when Steve Jobs hit the stage, and he's got this little thing called the iPhone.
Right.
And of course, they're just like, ugh.
I highly recommend to everybody they watch that movie, because that is the epitome of being on the top of the world and instantly, one of your competitors does something that changes the industry. Yeah.
And you don't see it coming.
Happened only an hour west of. It happened only an hour west of Sunjay, right?
Yeah.
It's his location.
So I had the opportunity to speak for. I had this picture on my website for the longest time, and Mike Lazaridis, who's one of the co-founders.
Yeah.
I have someone who took a picture. It was a professional photographer, took a picture over my shoulder, and he's wiping tears from laughing. And there's a bunch of suits in the front row, all laughing, and he's doing this. And that was on my front page of my website for a bunch of years. And this is during its heyday, and people said to me, "I hired you for that photo."
That's awesome.
You know what? Yeah, and then it was the same kind of crying and tear in his eye when Steve Jobs was on the screen.
Yes.
Guys, believe it or not, we are at the end of our time.
What?
Yes, I mean, according to my stopwatch, we need to wrap up. So
it went like this. It just went like this. It was just like crazy.
Any final thoughts on?
I definitely have a final thought. My final thought is, ladies and gentlemen, I want to say thank you so much for putting up with Jeff for the last 45 minutes. Sorry, we weren't there to buffer the pain, but you have to be creative in times like this.
Yeah, exactly. Mike?
Go forth and be creative. It's fun to be creative. Infuse your part of your workplace world with creativity, and you can't help, I think, but have more fun, be happier, and be more successful.
Yeah. And my thought is that risk-taking is an intricate part of creativity. And, yes, we have to push ourselves, you say, to get outside our comfort zone, whatever that means. You can't be creative without taking some kind of a risk. So when we think of it that way, we're more willing to step outside of our comfort zone, get outside our box, or color outside the lines, right?
Well, and Jeff, that speaks to the old cliche line, right? That sometimes the riskiest thing to do is to do nothing.
Right. Yeah. And on that note, we want to thank everybody. We're going to see you on
February 21st,
the 21st.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Right here on what show?
Every other
Wednesday.
Usually Richard does that, but thank you for filling in, guys. Good to see you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, folks.
Thanks, everyone.
Cheers.
See you in 2 weeks.
Bye. Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Sorry for going over time. We appreciate you. We'll see you on February the 21st. Bye, everyone.